Funding for the Outer Banks, North Carolina's coastal treasure, was provided in part by the Outer Banks Community Foundation, supporting programs and projects that enrich the quality of life on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The Outer Banks Visitors Bureau, a public authority that is the lead marketing and promotional agency for Dare County's Outer Banks. The Currituck and Hyde County Chambers of Commerce, the North Carolina Ferry System, and Collette Vacations. Traveling with Collette Vacations means more time enjoying your vacation and less time planning the details. And by UNC TV viewers like you.
There are some places in the world where all of life fits just right. The elements framed perfectly like watercolors upon a painter's canvas. The breath of the earth swaying and shifting. For here, one can watch a setting sun over the sound. And in that same minute, look to the ocean for a rising moon. This is a place where the curtain of heaven opens and Carolina blue turns to gold. Once the gliding province of clouds, now man enjoys such grace too. The distance traveled is far, but there are guides along the way. How else can one discover the mystery and magnificence of the Outer Banks? High above, the shore looks like floating pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The aqua snake traces of streams, fine strip bridges, and various shades of watery mirrors. Out to sea, dolphins play in the warmth of the Atlantic. And closer to shore, a pelican dives into the surf for an early evening meal. For here, the formation of flight became man's right. The constant breeze, an invitation to ascend, but descend and look down. For the tiniest petals hold drama, and the story of this place is great theater indeed. For this is the land of the lost colony, the graveyard of the Atlantic, and a cemetery that is forever England. A place with a history of pirates, mustangs, and a silver lake. A roaming travelogue of wildlife Edens, man-made towers, and tended gardens. And how to get here? Let's see. By boat, by ferry, by foot, paddle, surf, swim, climb up, roll down. Take a cue from the turtles. Relax. For here, time has its own pace, and frantic lives become serene silhouettes. Welcome to the Outer Banks.
Roseanne, Roseanne, my darling child, bye-bye, sweet Rosianna. Roseanne, Roseanne, my darling child, I won't be home tomorrow. Oh, the fishing boats are gone again. Bye-bye, sweet Rosianna. I won't be back till Lord knows when. I won't be home tomorrow. Hi, I'm David Holt, musician and beachcomber, always looking for a good song. You know, the sea has inspired many melodies. Sea shanties, they're called. These old tunes have a timeless quality, much like the Outer Banks themselves.
We're going to begin our tour of the Outer Banks up in the northern reaches of these famed beaches, popular destinations for tourists who are called comers and goers by the locals. But a whole lot more people are coming than going, even in these remote parts. In the last decade, the population has grown by more than 30% in the counties of Currituck and Dare. Still, this is hardly city living. For one thing, no matter how big your mansion, there's a chance Mother Nature's temper may blow it down. Paved roads are non-existent from Corolla to the Virginia border, four-wheel drive the preferred mode of transportation, tide permitting. And may the truck gods be with you, or at least some friends to help push you out if you get stuck. But don't worry, on this trip all you have to do is sit back and relax. Leave the tour and the tides to me. We begin at the Outer Banks' northernmost lighthouse. The Currituck Beach Lighthouse was built in 1875 and is one of 4 lighthouses on the Outer Banks. It draws thousands of visitors every year and is one of the best places to get a view of this area.
$211, $212, $213, $214 steps. And we're at the top of this grand lighthouse. And 158 feet above the ground and standing out too. Because you see, this light flashes every 20 seconds. Now that's just a 1,000-watt bulb. But because of this beautiful first order Fresnel lens, this thing can be seen for 18 nautical miles.
Just south of Currituck Beach Lighthouse stands the elegant Whalehead Club. Edward Collings Knight, Jr. built this mansion by the sea in 1925 for his wife Mary Louise. Originally named Corolla Island, they used this place as a winter retreat to satisfy their love for waterfowl hunting. The property was sold after their deaths to Ray T. Adams for a fraction of the original cost and renamed Whalehead Club. Over the years, the club was used for many different purposes, including housing for the U.S. Coast Guard, a summer school for boys, and headquarters for Atlantic research. By the early 1970s, much of the original property was sold off for development. In 1992, Currituck County purchased the remaining 39 acres along with the house. After a $6 million restoration project, the club has been restored to the Knights' original vision. The public is welcome to tour its 21,000 square foot interior. This structure housed the first elevator and basement on the Outer Banks. The original cork flooring has been reinstalled throughout the house. In the bathrooms, the porcelain fixtures and nickel pipes have been restored to their original beauty. Situated in the front sitting room of the house is Mrs. Knight's 1903 Steinway & Son piano. In 1925, she had this one-of-a-kind mahogany piano shipped down from their home in Philadelphia. Outside, visitors are able to take advantage of the park's boat ramp. This is a favorite spot for kayakers. Here they're able to spend a day exploring the marshlands and sound. Located just south of Whalehead Club, there's an oceanic research facility known worldwide for its work.
Once upon a time, you wouldn't find me walking on top of this sand dune. This used to be a Navy weapons test site. But today, it's the Army Corps of Engineers' premier coastal research center, located just north of Duck Village.
Here one finds a wide array of high-tech tools used to study the tidewaters of the Atlantic Ocean. Scientists from around the world come here to study issues like beach erosion and coastal dynamics. If you're going to conduct such research, a pier sure comes in handy. Here at the Research Center, scientists can stroll out nearly 1,900 feet into the surf to do their work.
This is a 35-foot coastal research amphibious buggy, CRAB for short. It's used to carry people and equipment from the shore out into the sea to conduct experiments and map the ocean floor. I'd love to drive this thing for the rest of our trip, but I don't think I could parallel park the darn thing. Sure is a beautiful ride, though.
Speaking of marvelous transportation machines, let's head south where two fellows named Orville and Wilbur changed the world. The Outer Banks are a long way from Dayton, Ohio, but the famed winds and soft sand of Kill Devil Hills were ideal for two brothers in the bicycle business, Orville and Wilbur Wright.
No, they weren't interested in riding their bicycles up and down this dune. They had loftier ideas. It's easy to spot where the Wright brothers made history. A 60-foot granite monument on top of Big Kill Devil Hill marks the area where the insane idea of man flying actually took off.
The date, December 17th, 1903. The first flight lasted all of 12 seconds. Total distance covered, 120 feet. But on that day, a handful of locals saw man no longer grounded. The Wright brothers successfully flew 4 times that day, and numbered markers indicate the distance of each flight. On the park grounds, you can visit wooden sheds replicating the Wright brothers' 1903 hangar and camp. The brothers spent 3 years here working on their flight ideas. Many times they went back to the drawing board.
Inside the Visitor Center, you can see a reproduction of the famous Wright Flyer, along with its gliding cousin. Now, this baby was no slouch itself. It flew 620 feet in 1902. A year later, it was the Wright Flyer's turn, powered by a 4-cylinder, 12-horsepower engine, which actually stalled the first time the Wright brothers attempted to fly it that fateful day in December. Wilbur was at the controls at that time, and he lost a coin flip to Orville to decide who would get a second chance at history.
Lucky Orville. He's in the record books, but his brother and he equally share the credit for making flight a reality. At the Visitor Center, you get a great history lesson of their achievement and the amazing progress that followed. I mean, think about it. 65 years after the Wright brothers flew here, Neil Armstrong was walking on the moon. Speaking of history, Outer Banks lore can be confusing. See, it's a common mistake to think the Wright brothers made their historic flight in Kitty Hawk, just a few miles north of Kill Devil Hills. Not so. The brothers initially stayed in Kitty Hawk when they arrived in the fall of 1900. They're remembered here where the Wright Brothers Memorial Bridge is. Named in their honor, it stretches almost 2 miles across the Currituck Sound and is the main thoroughfare to this part of the Outer Banks.
Speaking of Kitty Hawk and Kill Devil Hills, where did those names come from? Well, nobody really knows for sure, but Kitty Hawk may have evolved from an Indian word, killy honk, which refers to the goose hunting in this area. Kill Devil Hills, well, that may refer to a batch of Kill Devil rum that washed up on shore during the colonial days. Now let's head south to another beautiful place with a strange name. Since 1738, this area has been marked on maps as Nag's Head. Nag's Head, what kind of name is that? Well, the local legend has it that long before there were sunbathers, there were some very clever robbers who would take lanterns and put them around their horses' necks and lead them up and down this beach at night. Well, the ships out at sea would see those lanterns, think they were sailboats, get too close to shore, run aground. The robbers would then board the ships, make off with the loot, and that's how it came to be called Nag's Head. Well, at least that's the legend. It's a good one, though.
What's fact is this beautiful area housed the first resorts in the Outer Banks and remains a popular vacation destination, especially for sand dune daredevils.
I'm standing at the base of Jockey's Ridge, the highest sand dune on the East Coast, standing over 90 feet tall, where modern-day Wright brothers practice their own unique form of flying, hang gliding.
Clear. Start walking. Jog, look up, pull the bar in, pull the bar in, pull the
If you ever wanted to know what it must have felt like to be a Wright brother, to actually fly here at the Outer Banks, this is the place to do it. Both beginners and experts from all over the United States come here to glide down this 90-foot mound. A mound, incidentally, that is shrinking. At the turn of the century, the summit was estimated to be at the 140-foot mark. But in true Outer Banks fashion, the land is always changing, shaped by nature's unpredictable hand. The one constant, steady winds. And those breezes aren't just for hang gliders, they're for kites too.
You're doing great, pal.
Now, this young fellow may not be named Wilbur or Orville, but I think the Wright brothers would approve of this flying technique. Now, this is a great place for a lot of reasons. One, this is the ultimate sandbox for kids. You've got 3 peaks to play in, 140 acres to explore. Since the kids are having such a blast, might as well take those pictures. This is one of the most popular places for photographers. And speaking of art in the air, there's another reason so many people make the climb up Jockey's Ridge. Ah, the sunsets. Is it any wonder people like to soak up the evenings here? Some places just delightfully overwhelm you. One could be lulled to sleep here, but we're not ready for bedtime yet. In fact, let's wind back the clock and the sun and check out another favorite Outer Banks pastime, one that was born here.
One of the common sights along the Outer Banks is the miniature golf course. No trip to the beach is complete without a round of 18 here at Blackbeard's Miniature Golf. Now, while I finish up, here's a preview of what's coming up in our next segment as we go south on the Outer Banks.
From Blackbeard the miniature golf celebrity to Blackbeard the real pirate, coming up on our Outer Banks tour, we'll head to Ocracoke Island, where Blackbeard reigned terror and lost his head over it. But have no fear, our ferry ride over to Ocracoke will be pirate-free. The only raiders on the trip will be some seagulls hanging around for a snack. We'll also visit the world-famous Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, which after years of helping sailors, needed a little life-saving help itself. We'll investigate the mystery of the lost colony and how it's one of the most entertaining history lessons you'll ever hear about. We'll climb aboard the Elizabeth II, which is in a lot better shape than many other Outer Banks ships. Yes, this is a dangerous area, the graveyard of the Atlantic. But relax, you're in for a smooth ride. The Outer Banks, a name hinting of remoteness and mystery. A place where the roads are absorbed by the sand. Where ocean waves are accompanied by a rising sun. And a setting sun that merges into the sea. A place that from the air looks prehistoric. And indeed, history is in the air. And at the bottom of the sea. A history engraved on man-made monuments deep in the forest. These barrier islands home to two addresses, the ocean and the sound. A fragile destiny determined by nature herself. The ever-shifting sands making for a gorgeous puzzle. A puzzle right from the start. Just ask the first European settlers, except no one knows where they went.
Welcome back to our tour of the Outer Banks. Hi, I'm David Holt, full-time musician and part-time detective. Well, at least for this first stop, because you see, we're here to investigate the mystery of Roanoke Island's lost colony. They were the first English settlers who arrived here, and they came on ships like this one, the Elizabeth II.
It's a 69-foot square-rigged sailing vessel, anchored on Manteo's waterfront, and is part of Roanoke Island's Festival Park exhibits. Visitors to the park are able to tour the boat and get a feel for what ocean travel was like for the first English explorers. A total of 55 men were crowded aboard a ship like this one for that historic maiden voyage to America. And it took them 110 days to cross the Atlantic.
Aye there, laddie, or is it lassie? It's hard to tell with just one good eye. Put out me left eye, you know, by sighting the sun with an astrolabe.
You can discover 400 years of Outer Banks history as well. The Roanoke Adventure Museum is located here in Festival Park. One can discover the rich history that makes this area so unique. This museum offers more interactive history under one roof than you'll find anywhere else on the Outer Banks.
The park also has a settlement site that represents what life was like for the first settlers here. Costumed interpreters recreate many of the daily activities like cooking, military exercises, and games. And let me tell you, it was a tough life in the late 1500s. Makes you glad you're just a visiting tourist.
The colonists were led by naturalist John White. His group of men, women, and children numbered 117. Here at the Fort Raleigh National Site, you can walk around the original grounds, making this one of America's most historic areas.
Now, White had to return to England in that year of 1587 for more food and supplies. But his return trip was delayed because there was a war between England and Spain. And when he did return here, to his complete shock, this place was totally deserted. No sign of bloodshed, no upheaval, just completely deserted. Now, making things even more eerie, two cryptic carvings on one of these nearby trees. One said crow, the other said Croatan.
Those were the only clues. Clues fiercely debated to this day. What does crow and Croatan mean? Were the settlers forced out by hostile tribes? Did they panic and die at sea, trying desperately to get back home after White did not return immediately? No one really knows. There's another location in the park that pays tribute to the lost colony in a most beautiful way.
This is a statue of Virginia Dare, the first English child born on American soil. Of course, in reality, she disappeared as a baby with the lost colony. But this statue's presence graces the Elizabethan Gardens, a fantastic 10.5-acre floral display right here on Roanoke Island. Let's go take a look at the gardens.
There are over 1,000 varieties of flowers, shrubs, and trees to be admired, along with beautiful sculptures and fountains. The gardens were created by the Garden Club of North Carolina as a memorial to the first English colonist. Well, one thing we do know is everybody loves a great mystery. And here at the Waterside Theater near Fort Raleigh, the legend of the Lost Colony comes to life.
In fact, The Lost Colony is the longest running outdoor drama in America. People have been enjoying this story since 1937, and some famous people have portrayed the characters. Did you know that Andy Griffith once played Sir Walter Raleigh? Yep, long before he was Sheriff of Mayberry, he was royalty here on Roanoke Island.
The Lost Colony is an outdoor spectacle, and the Insider's Guide to the Outer Banks proclaims the show as one of the most popular summertime events on the Outer Banks. There's another very popular place on Roanoke Island, one that draws thousands of visitors every year.
Well, there's no mystery as to why the North Carolina Aquarium is such a big hit here on Roanoke Island. Because if you want to see the underwater world of the Outer Banks without putting on a wetsuit, you've come to the right place.
This is just one of 3 aquariums on the North Carolina coast. They're both indoor and outdoor exhibits, some where you can get up close and personal with the marine life. However, the sharks aren't part of the touching tour. And if you want to know more about marine life, there are scuba divers here to give you a unique lesson on all the riches that lie beneath the water. You can even ask them questions while they're in the tank. Most people comment about a certain shipwreck they have on display.
Yep, this is a replica behind me here of the USS Monitor, the legendary Civil War ironclad ship. Now, the Monitor sank about 17 miles off the coast of Cape Hatteras in a huge storm in 1862. Well, it's time to leave Roanoke Island and head out to Cape Hatteras. And along the way, we'll stop and visit another historic lighthouse.
This is the Bodie Island Lighthouse, located just south of Roanoke Island. It's the second of 4 lighthouses still standing on the Outer Banks. Built in 1872, this 150-foot black and white beacon now sits more than a half a mile from the sea. When it was originally built, the lighthouse was quite close to the Oregon Inlet.
But while the lighthouse stands still, the inlet is moving away. That's life here on the Outer Banks, forever changing. A sand shifting, hurricane house wrecking, diamond shoal ship sinking jewel. And nowhere is that more evident than over there at the Oregon Inlet.
Ah, the Oregon Inlet. Gorgeous, isn't it? Where the ocean and the Sound meet. Created complements of an 1846 hurricane. This is one of the most dangerous waterways on the East Coast. Lives and boats have been lost here because of the ever-shifting shoals. But many take the risk because this is the main passage for fishing vessels. Yes, it's dangerous for boats, but drivers have a safe ride as they cruise over the Herbert C. Bonner Bridge, built in 1964. Before the bridge, Hatteras Island residents relied on ferry boats to get across the Oregon Inlet. And in 1990, it was like old times again, when the bridge was shut down for 4 months after hurricane winds broke free a dredge barge that ended up slamming into the center section of the bridge. Yes, hurricanes are a fact of life out here and can cause a lot of damage, but look what they can create too. The Outer Banks are a beautiful irony, tranquil yet traumatic. And here at the Cape Hatteras National Seashore, you get a sense of both. This is the place where even a towering lighthouse needed to be saved from the sea. The Cape Hatteras Lighthouse is the nation's tallest. The 208-foot tower is both majestic and powerful. Its flashing beacon can be seen 20 miles out to sea. The ocean could have easily toppled this structure if man had not intervened. In 1999, the lighthouse was moved from the threatening Atlantic surf, which every year pounds further inland. The massive move entailed transporting the lighthouse nearly 3/4 of a mile back from the sea. No easy feat considering the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse weighs 6,250 tons.
Wonder why it weighs so much? See this one brick right here? That's just one of 1,250,000 bricks that make up this lighthouse.
There are 268 steps to climb if you want to catch a view from the top.
From here you can overlook the graveyard of the Atlantic. The Hatteras area is especially treacherous. Over 600 ships have wrecked along this coast.
Vessels fall prey to the ever-shifting diamond shoals, those shallow sandbars which extend 14 miles off the coast in a fang-like fashion that can easily ground a boat.
It takes more than a lighthouse to ensure safety on the coast. It takes acts of human bravery. And here on Hatteras Island, daily acts of heroism happened at the Chickamaucomico Life-Saving Station. Now that's quite a mouthful, but it deserves a lot of talk. You see, this is the most famous of the original 7 Outer Banks life-saving stations. And for more than 70 years, Chickamaucomico crews risked their lives in the turbulent waters off Hatteras to save others.
There were a total of 22 life-saving stations on the Outer Banks at one time. Today, this is the only one left. It has been saved and turned into a museum. And visitors can tour the grounds and see artifacts that were used in those early life-saving days. Now, with all this talk of sunken ships and daring life-saving rescues, you might think no one would want to venture out into the waters off Hatteras. Well, guess again. Thanks to that constant breeze, Hatteras Island features some of the best windsurfing in the country. And surfers often hang out here, especially during strong nor'easters. Meanwhile, the fishing can't be beat, in part because the waters off Hatteras are a mix of 3 ocean currents, bringing in rich nutrients that a wide variety of fish love to feast on.
Hatteras Island is truly a natural wonder. Some of the most precious and fragile lands can be found here. It's not all just sand and surf.
There are marshes here and woods sculpted by the wind. The Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge protects over 5,000 acres in this part of the Outer Banks. And protection is a key word here. Back in 1953, Cape Hatteras became this country's first national seashore, protecting it from any future development. The park covers over 80% of the island, and there's something for everyone here. From bird watching to fishing, from getting a tan to walking a hiking trail. And whenever you get too hot, well, there's an endless supply of water to help you cool off. The Cape Hatteras National Seashore extends south from Nag's Head to Ocracoke Inlet, and it's to Ocracoke Island where we're headed next.
There's no road to Ocracoke. Well, that's part of its charm. And better yet, the ferry runs free between Hatteras and Ocracoke Island. You don't need to make reservations because the ferry runs frequently in the summer, and the trip only takes about 40 minutes.
It's a beautiful area that has a somewhat dark past. History's most notorious pirate crafted his trade in these waters.
We're just about to enter Blackbeard's favorite hideout. The legendary pirate used to hang out at the south end of Ocracoke Island. Now, his real name was Edward Teach, and for years he raided unsuspecting ships on the high seas. Now, Blackbeard and his unruly gang ruled the waters primarily on the 40-gun ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, and the pickings were good because lots of cargo passed through these barrier islands.
Blackbeard's reign of robbery would come to an end in 1718 when he was pretty roughed up by the British Navy. In no particular order, Blackbeard was shot, stabbed, slashed, and beheaded in a slough off Ocracoke. Let's head on shore and discover the natural treasures that make up Ocracoke Island. 16 miles in length, 2 miles across at its widest, with unlimited possibilities in every direction. After leaving the ferry, you have a 12-mile drive to Ocracoke Village. And since approximately 90% of the island is owned and maintained by the U.S. Park Service, there's no development here, just wide open spaces of marshland, pine forest, sand dunes, and of course, beaches. On your way into the village, you'll want to make a stop to admire one of the more unique forms of wildlife here on the Outer Banks.
Beautiful, aren't they? These small, sturdy horses are descended from Spanish Mustangs, but there's some dispute about how they got to this remote island. Some say they were refugees from Spanish shipwrecks. Others say an English sea captain unloaded them after accidentally grounding here in 1585. But one fact is certain. By the 1800s, herds of these wild horses roam freely on Ocracoke Island. But today, they're kept in this 180-acre enclosure because of the growing development and traffic hazards here.
The Ocracoke ponies are just part of the legend that makes up Ocracoke Island and its many ties to shipwrecks. The island is also home to another historic Outer Banks lighthouse.
This is the Ocracoke Inlet Lighthouse, the fourth and final lighthouse on the Outer Banks, and what a fine one it is, too. It's North Carolina's oldest lighthouse, still in operation, and also the smallest. It's only 75 feet tall. But don't let the size fool you. This little lighthouse hasn't met a hurricane yet it couldn't lick.
Back in the 1940s, it wasn't just friendly ships that spotted the Ocracoke Lighthouse. German U-boats saw it as well.
In fact, during World War II, the Outer Banks were known as Torpedo Junction. Over 60 Allied ships were sunk off this coast. On May 11th, 1942, a German submarine torpedoed and sank the British vessel Bedfordshire. All hands were lost. The bodies of 4 British soldiers washed up on this beach.
In a touching tribute, Ocracoke residents buried the sailors here and donated the land to Britain. The British Cemetery is a 12 by 14 foot plot of land that is beautifully summed up in the words of Robert Brooke. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some forever corner of a foreign field that is forever England. The British Cemetery is a somber reminder of the tragic events that have visited Ocracoke Island. What a history! Shipwrecks, pirates, enemy submarines. You would never know it here in Ocracoke Village by beautiful Silver Lake. One can truly appreciate the peace and tranquility this place has, especially at the end of the day.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed our journey along the Outer Banks. You know, some places are beautiful, some places are historic, and some remain untouched by the modern world. But few places have all of those qualities. You really have to get out there to find such a place. Maybe that's why the Outer Banks is such a perfect name for this one. I'm David Holt, musician, storyteller, and a man in no hurry to get back to the mainland. Maybe I'll see you out here on the Outer Banks.